What's up, guys, and welcome back to All the Shit, a conversation about life for young men and big kids who never really grew up, like me. Thanks for checking in. Do you smell that? I'm getting hints of rented tuxedo, sweat, and maybe what is that, anxiety? Oh yeah, it's prom season, baby! I have seen so many anxious questions about prom lately. You're anxious about what to wear, you're anxious about pre- and post-prom formalities, and most of all, you're anxious about who you're gonna go with. There's nothing quite like a high school prom to make you acutely aware of your relationship status, whether you're in one or not. As you get older, you can substitute going to a friend's wedding for going to prom, but it's the same reality check in terms of who you're with. Let's be honest, fellas. With as much time as we spend thinking about getting a girlfriend, or hell, even just getting a date, you think we'd have a better idea of what to do when we actually land one. Does anybody else just feel dumber when you find out that somebody likes you? Yeah, fellas, for as much time as we dedicate to trying to impress women, trying to make them laugh, and imagining what we'll do when we finally get a date, we're often so surprised when we actually get one that we forget how to act and what to do next. Now, I promised you the number one key to a successful relationship. Ironically, it has nothing to do with your partner at all. The number one key to a successful relationship is knowing and loving yourself. What? What kind of eat, pray, love bullshit is that? Come on, man. What? Loving myself? What is that? Is that code for masturbate? Nope. It's not that. To know yourself is to know what you truly want in a relationship. Or perhaps more importantly, what you don't want. What are your must-haves and deal breakers? Keep in mind that this is going to evolve over time. Right now, you may be at the point where you will take any girl who will have you. And I get it. Trust me, I've definitely been there. And if that's you, you're probably not ready or even looking for a serious relationship. Even if you've already had a few girlfriends, you may still not be ready or looking for a serious relationship. And that's fine. However, if you are looking for something more significant, or know that you will be eventually at some point in the future, then you need to pay attention. As you gain experience by dating a variety of people, you'll start to learn what traits you value. Maybe you're looking for someone with a similar sense of humor, or someone who shares your passion for a certain hobby. You'll also learn what traits you want to avoid, like someone who's overly critical, or cares more about their Instagram followers than spending time with you. What are the traits and characteristics that you look for in a person that you want to hang out with, beyond just the looks? As you start to compile your list, pay more attention to the deal breakers than the deal makers. Think about the deal makers, the characteristics that you really like, as nice to haves, while the deal breakers are absolute non-starters. For example, would you rather date someone who loves music as much as you do, but constantly tells you what to do and how to dress when you're out in public? Or someone who doesn't give a shit about Taylor Swift's latest album? Not me. Love you, Taylor. But loves you for who you are, despite the fact that you constantly dress like it's cartoon time on Saturday morning. If your hobbies change, and they will over time, you're still gonna be stuck with someone who wants you to be someone you're not. Knowing yourself and your deal makers and deal breakers in a partner is a great first step. However, your relationship is still gonna struggle if you don't learn to love yourself first. What about now? Now you're talking about master. No, man, get your head out of the gutter. Loving yourself comes down to accepting who you are at your core. Not only the things you like about yourself, but more importantly, learning how to accept the parts of yourself that you don't particularly like. Maybe it's something about your physical appearance. Maybe you don't like how shy you are, or that you're easily embarrassed in social situations. If you don't learn to accept these things as a part of who you are and overcome the belief that they somehow make you unworthy of love, you can project these perceived flaws into your relationship without even realizing it. You'll see their reflection in something that your partner does or says that will start gnawing at the back of your mind and planting those seeds of shame, distrust, and jealousy. When you see your partner responding positively to a quality in somebody else that you feel like is a shortcoming for yourself, that's when jealousy can start creeping into your relationship.
Darling, I will be loving you till we're 70. Baby, my heart will still beat as hard at 23. Buddy, I will be stealing your girl momentarily. Just love my smile and the way I sing, yeah, she's gonna leave.
Before you know it, you'll find yourself overreacting to small infractions and blowing them up into something much bigger. You'll fight way more often about dumb, inconsequential issues that have nothing to do with the root cause of the problem. Instead of enjoying that relationship that you waited so long for, you'll find yourself stressing about when your partner will finally have had enough and kick you to the curb. Come on, that's girl shit, bro. Relationships end when I say they do. Dude, if that's true, then you're definitely in the minority. Statistically speaking, girls dump guys at a much higher rate than the other way around. Even divorce, the ultimate breakup. Did you know that 70% of divorces are initiated by women? And breakups at any level tend to hit us a lot harder. Because while girls are great at sharing and processing their emotions with their friends, we're under a lot more social pressure to keep that shit to ourselves. Think about it. You may have plenty of friends, but how often do you and your boys just sit around talking about relationship issues? That's what I thought. So going back to loving yourself. When you learn to accept and embrace the things that you don't particularly like about yourself, you take away their power, and you're better able to navigate those insecurities that come with them. Start by making a list of those things that you don't like about yourself. It can be a private list. Nobody has to see it but you. For each one, ask yourself, and be honest, is this something I can change? If it is, then get to work. And if not, man, it is what it is. The sooner you start accepting it, owning it, and not trying to hide it, the better off you and all of your future relationships will be. So to bring this thing all the way back around to prom, hey, I'd like to introduce you to my friend Katie. Katie and I go way back, and we used to compete in weightlifting together.
Remember we used to lift heavy shit all the time? I did not understand or realize how good we were. But now that I'm older and weaker, I'm like, man, it's just wild to me. I wish I would have appreciated it back then.
Katie joined me to talk about her work at Bella Boutique, a nonprofit she works with to provide free formal wear, including shoes, jewelry, and accessories, to high school students with families in financial hardship to enable them to attend prom and homecoming without the financial burden that often comes with it. In addition to talking about prom, we dig into relationships and life lessons that we've learned along the way. It's a unique opportunity to get both a male and female perspective on this topic at the same time. And Katie doesn't pull any punches. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Hey Katie, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me and to become the second woman ever to participate in all the shit. Katie, you and I met 10 years ago, at least. I mean, it goes a ways back. I've been in Virginia now for 6 years, so I know that we were together for at least 4 years as friends in Colorado before we left.
Yep.
And we kind of lost touch a little bit, And then we reconnected over an email that you sent earlier this year. And this is a project that you're working on with Bella Boutique, which is a nonprofit in Denver that I didn't know you were a part of. I think the mission is super cool. So Katie is the president, 3-year term as president of Bella Boutique, which provides free formal wear, shoes, jewelry, and accessories to high school students with families in financial hardship to enable them to attend prom and homecoming without the financial burden that can come with it. So Katie, before we really get started here, can you tell me a little bit more about Bella Boutique and the mission and ultimately what led you to it?
Yeah, great question. So Bella's been around for 10 years. This is actually our 10-year anniversary, which is super exciting. There's a lot of other nonprofits that are similar to Bella Boutique. The woman who started this organization came from Seattle, which they have a similar nonprofit there. And when she moved to Denver with her husband, she wanted to start that here. So we started off in a gymnasium servicing 17 students, and we have grown it over the years to what we are today. So it's prom season right now, so I don't have updated stats, but for last year, we helped over 500 students, which is record-breaking for us. So we had one of our best years last year. So we're in the midst of prom right now. We're also preparing for our 10-year anniversary celebration, just a little fundraising event, silent auction. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be some food and drinks, and I can provide you information on that so if anyone wants to attend who's in the Denver area. But how it works is that students who are within the area, they basically sign up to make an appointment to come and shop. And so when they are there, they are paired with a volunteer who is basically their personal shopper. And so they get an hour to find a dress. And once they found the dress, they get the rest of the time to get a pair of shoes, jewelry, purses, anything they want. They get to take it. It's completely free. I don't want it back. I have so many dresses and shoes. It's phenomenal. We have sizes 00 all the way up to oversized 30 in multiple shapes, sizes, colors, lengths, all of the things that you could ever think of in a dress. So we have over 3,000 dresses. So it's just a really fun opportunity to get to play dress up with high school kids.
Yeah, that sounds super cool. 500, that's a lot. And it just goes to show you how much financial hardship there really is. I think a lot of times that's hidden, particularly from kids that aren't experiencing it, and you don't necessarily know who those people are. And you just kind of speak to the volume of the issue. Is there some anonymity to going in, or how do you guys handle that?
Meaning like making sure that they don't feel like an outcast? Is that what you want to?
Yeah, like it's not like, I got this, it's like I used to shop at Goodwill. I didn't tell people I shopped at Goodwill. You might be able to tell by looking at me, but I'm guessing that the stuff that you guys have is probably pretty top notch. Most of these dresses, it's not like it's an everyday piece of apparel. And I'm guessing they're all just donated from people that have worn them once.
Yeah, so actually we get a ton of donations from the community, but also from different shops around the community. So we have like bridal stores that will sell prom dresses that are from last season, and new season's coming in. So they'll donate us brand new dresses. And so when you walk into the store, the vibe is if you are going to a local boutique and shopping for a dress. We don't ask for proof of financial hardship. We just assume that if you are here, you need our services, no questions asked. So we're open to all and everyone. We've had so many people over the years come from outside of Colorado just because it is cheaper to physically travel to Colorado to get a dress and shoes and purse and jewelry than it is to pay for that brand new wherever they live. So like I said, we don't ask questions. We make sure that everyone feels welcome, and we have it set up pretty cool. So no parents can come in the back with the students, like no parents allowed, no teachers, no one can come back. And there's a reason for that. So we want to make sure that the student is there and getting something that they want to get. We want them to have the independence and the choice that they want to wear whatever they want. So the other cool thing is that we don't have sizes on the rack or mirrors in the fitting room. So when a student tries on a dress, they are forced to walk all the way to the front of the shop where we have just a wall of mirrors, which is awesome because then all the parents and guardians and everyone's there, and it's just like a runway show, right? But we want them to make sure that they're comfortable in the dress that they choose. And so we have a lot of students who will come in and they'll be like, oh, I want like a strapless dress. And we're like, okay, great. And then we put them in strapless dresses and they're like walking out like this. And we're like, you don't want a strapless dress. Let's put you in something else. And so we make sure that walking in front of a bunch of parents, if you're not comfortable, you're not going to be comfortable at a school gym. And so we really want to make sure that the student walks out of there feeling comfortable and confident in the choice that they make. And obviously just making sure that everyone feels like they're beautiful, which they all are. So it is so much fun.
Yeah, that sounds pretty awesome. I'll be honest. I think there's probably going to be some young ladies who listen to this and think, why would I even bother going to buy a dress? That sounds like a much better experience all the way around.
We actually do have a couple students who come in and don't realize that we're a nonprofit. And once they do realize, they end up donating whatever cash that their mom gave them when they walked out the door, which is also pretty cool too. And we accept Venmo and we have like a Square tablet there. So we're always accepting donations within the store as well.
That's great. Yeah, that sounds amazing. I would love to get that information and put it in the notes under this video. So if you guys are interested in donating to that cause, learning more about Bella Boutique, please check it out. Linked below, both the Venmo and just the link to your website. I think that's an incredible story. It lines up so well with what I'm trying to do with the book, All the Shit I Wish I Knew in High School. And of course, this podcast, the ATS podcast. And really, it's just, there's something, once you get out of that phase of high school and you think back on your time and what was challenging for you and what you wish had been different, there's something that motivates you to want to give back to those people that are in the shoes that you filled and that time of your life that you felt exposed in some way, whether it was emotionally or physically vulnerable in some way. So when I saw that email and you were communicating this is what you're working on, I got very excited to have you on the show to talk about not only what you're doing, but I think now as we look back on that time in our lives, we get to reminisce and not only make fun of ourselves a little bit, but also offer some guidance to those who are going through it now. And as you know, I'm sure you're well aware, having worked with so many young women to get them into these dresses, you must hear a ton of drama that's just, it is part of high school, right? And I think prom season in particular, anytime you have a dance where it's a big event, whether it's a homecoming or a prom or a junior prom, you're very aware immediately, whether you're in a relationship or not, that relationships are a huge part of this equation. So if you're open to it, I would love to talk with you about your history. I'll talk about my history, and we'll just walk through the phases. Because I think the questions that I see from young people regarding relationships, a lot of them, it's very clearly in that early phase where you're still trying to figure out who you are, what you want to be. Maybe you're attracted to a certain type of person, but in the long run, maybe that's not going to be the right type of person for you. But how do you tell someone that at a young age? And so I think having been on that Ferris wheel of life and relationships, it'll be interesting to hear your perspective. I think a lot of the guys that listen to this show maybe have never heard a woman's perspective on some of these questions, so it'll be enlightening for them as well. So if you're open to it, I'd love to go down that path with you.
Absolutely. I got stories for days.
I'm sure you do. And so we mentioned at the top that we met through the gym. One of my first memories of you, honestly, when did you move to Colorado?
2009, literally the week I graduated college, I drove out to Colorado.
Okay, so that was right about the time that I was getting into CrossFit as well. And by the time I met you, you were already a well-known, let's just say a well-known name in the nascent CrossFit scene of Denver. And you had a bit of a reputation as kind of just like an up-and-coming badass. Like the women in our gym that, we had an in-house competition, I think, and you'd signed up and it was like, oh, Katie's coming. It's like, And when I met you, it was at that competition for the first time. And you did have a bit of a chip on your shoulder. You carried yourself with poise and confidence and just like I'll slit your throat type of attitude. And
it's because I have RBF, I'll tell you that. Keep going.
I'm curious if you had a certain persona as you came into the gym and if you knew that was the vibe you were giving off, or if it was a way for you to almost put up a mask to say, hey, don't fuck with me.
Well, I wouldn't say not to fuck with me. That's not the mask I was putting up. The mask was at the gym I was at previously. I had gone to CrossFit regionals and competed on a team. And so I was internally now competing with myself because I had to almost prove it to other people who had known me in that phase of being able to qualify for CrossFit. Like, I wanted to make sure that they knew that I deserved to be there. And I felt like I needed to prove that. And so it made me work harder to get to where I needed to be, to feel like people were accepting it and felt like I deserved to actually go to regionals when I did.
I got you. So it's more like trying to live up to, in your own mind, what you perceived other people thought of you as a result of what you'd achieved.
Yep.
Man, I think so many of us experienced that. I know I certainly did. I still do to this day. And it's sometimes I catch myself thinking about, am I projecting who I want people to see, or am I projecting my true self? And I think that's something that most of us wrestle with over the entirety of our lives. And that carries into all of our relationships, not just your relationship with people you're working with in the gym, but outside of that as well. And I think for most people, it does start when you get your first relationship, because you're looking at, oh, this is the type of person I want to be with, or that girl or that guy is super cute, and how do I get their attention, or how do I get on their radar? Did you experience any of that in high school?
Yeah. Well, I really only dated one person in high school, but it was about 2.5 years worth of high school. So it was a fairly long time, but
that's like a 10-year marriage.
Basically.
If you think about it, right? High school dating relationships tend to feel longer.
Yeah. And, like, it was a great relationship, but it didn't end any way poorly by any means. Like, literally, if I ran into him on the street today, I would say hi and say, hey, how are you doing? But yeah, it's so funny because the 3 things I went for back then were, they needed to be smart, they needed to be athletic, and they needed to be funny. Like, those were my like priorities. And this person met them all. So, which is funny because I think about it now, like, in hindsight, that really hasn't changed. Like, I do like those qualities in people, but like, that's what I was going for back then.
Yeah. To me, that says that you had confidence, because for me, it was like, oh, that girl has interest in me, I guess I like her. You know, it was like, I didn't have that confidence to even know what I was really interested in. I was just so shell-shocked, because for me, it was a transition from 6th grade elementary school in Arizona, moving to Virginia and being in the middle of middle school in 7th grade. So first time with lockers, first time changing classes, first time seeing girls in a new light that was like, oh my gosh, they're young women now. It's not just these little girls that I've been going to school with. I had no idea how to react to it. Did you find yourself either in the way that you presented yourself or the way that you accessorized, did you use that as a way to attract the type of guy that you were looking for? Or was it more just about fitting in with what was cool at the time?
Well, I was never cool, I'll tell you that.
I have a hard time believing that.
But you know what's funny is that I've had my core group of friends since high school. Like, the people who when I go back home to Illinois, I see this core group of friends, and all of them are male. I was such a tomboy back then. I just loved playing sports, and I loved doing all of the things that my brothers were doing. And so I ended up having a lot of really strong male relationships. But I also feel like that made me understand a little bit more of the male brain when it came to being in high school. And I'm like, this guy's an idiot. I don't want any qualities. He's one of my greatest friends, right? But I don't want any of the qualities that he has, you know? So I was seeing things that I dislike in my friends and making sure that like the person that I'm interested in or trying to reach out doesn't have those qualities. It's learning that way. But I'd also say that, can I ask, are your parents divorced? Because I feel like that plays a lot into like how I...
Yeah, I agree with you. My parents are not divorced, and my parents are still happily married. And I told Anna this before, and it's a true story. I've never seen my parents fight.
Wow.
I don't know that I'm not saying they never fight, but I've never seen it, and they've never showed it in front of me and my brothers.
That's wild, because I have core memories of my parents fighting before they got divorced. And they divorced when I was pretty young. I'm the oldest, and they got divorced when I was like 6. But I feel like when you come from a divorced household, all you want in a relationship is not to be divorced. And so you're constantly trying to find these gaps or these red flags, I guess, in the person that you're with, because you're like, oh, that has qualities of what I saw when my parents were together, and that's not what I want, right? So I think that's a key thing to think about when you are looking for the other person, is if you've had role model parents to show you this is how relationships should be versus having divorced parents. But one of the best things about that is that I got to watch, my dad raised me in the long run, and I got to watch my dad develop a relationship, start dating, and fall in love with my stepmom, who I absolutely adore. And I think that was also very formative in the way that I find people who I want to date, because I saw that as a teenager as well, and could understand the processes and things that they were going through, and things that my dad was doing, trying to get my stepmom riled in to marry him. And so I thought it's kind of a cool experience in that way. So
it's interesting that you say that, because the same way that you had red flags of this is what I don't want, right? I had red flags that I would look for too. And as strangely parallel, as soon as I would get into a relationship, without fail, I immediately would try and find the one or two things that weren't what I was looking for, so that I could say, when it's time to break up, these are my reasons. And until then, I'm going to enjoy the ride. It's such a jaded way of looking at relationships. And again, coming from parents with a great marriage, I don't know why that was top of mind for me, but I always dated with that idea of, I never dated with the intention of, well, this is going to be a short fling just for fun. It was always for me, is this someone I'm compatible with? I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's just how I operated. But it was going in saying, well, yep, this girl's pretty cool. I could hang out for a while, but I know it's not a long-term thing for this reason. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you had a similar, but did you even entertain someone that had a red flag at all? Or was it just like, you don't check all the boxes, you out?
Yeah, they were entertained, and that's why they're not here anymore. But no, it's you see these red flags, but they don't come out as red when you find them. They're kind of like an orangey yellow, and you're like, well, let me see if it changes. Let me see if I can fix it. There's been relationships where you're like, well, I can fix that person, and then you finally just realize, like, no, this is not gonna work.
I think that's a hard one for people to grasp. Really, when it comes to that, you have to look at yourself and be like, am I going to change for this person? I might want to try, but if it's in you, it's in you. And you have to look at that same thing from their perspective and be like, well, is it worth me trying? Or how much am I willing to compromise on certain aspects of what I truly want to be with this person? I think a lot of people get stuck. It's because the downside of that is, even if these are the things that I know we're ultimately not going to be compatible, if you decide to get into a relationship, to end it, there's got to be a breakup. And that, I think, is the really hard thing for a lot of people. It comes down to, I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. So what, do I just not date, or do I just suffer through whatever relationship I happen to fall into? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've got plenty of just tear my heart out breakup stories, and I'm sure you do too. I feel like anyone who's been through more than one relationship, you have that story. There's not ever really, with very few exceptions, an amicable breakup that people are just like, yeah, I don't think so either. See you later. And we'll stay Facebook friends, or, whatever. It doesn't really happen anymore.
No, but I do think that you can have a breakup and still be amicable. Like like I said, the guy I dated in high school, I could, if I saw him on the street today, I would go up and say, hey, how are you? Great to see you. But there's others that I would be like, avoid. Like, oh, they're down that grocery aisle. I'm going back to my car for 20 minutes before I'm watching them walk out before I go back into the grocery store. There's definitely people like that.
Yeah, there's certain ones where even if we lock eyes for a second, it's about to be drama up in here and no one wants to see that. I totally get that. Yeah. So with that guy that you dated for 2 years of high school, 2+ years, what was that breakup like? And what were I guess as you determined, was it when you went off to college that you decided to break up?
So it was the year before college. Basically, he was going to be going to a school out of state. It wasn't going to work. It was just kind of like, this isn't going to work. I'm not doing long distance while I'm in college. No, that was it. I mean, it was heartbreaking, yes. Like, of course, that was the first person who I loved, the first person who I wanted to spend time with, and I enjoyed spending my time with. But I was also at this phase where like I'm about to go to college and that's a whole new experience. And I just wanted to not be with someone who, especially someone who was going to be hours away.
That's a healthy way to look, very healthy way to look at it. I stayed with my high school girlfriend through college. And if I had to name one regret in my life, that is probably it. And it's not because she wasn't a great person, because like your ex-boyfriend, if I saw her, and I've seen her several times since, but it's always amicable. I'm happy that she's happy and vice versa. But I wish I had given myself that time in college to really grow and figure out who I was as a person more. Because those years, whether you go to college or not, really those couple years after high school is when you really make that significant growth in who you are. And I think it's because that age is when your prefrontal cortex is really coming online. You're really rounding out as a person and locking into who you're going to be as a core individual. And if you're trying to pull someone along and force them to fit that mold with you while they're also changing and diverging into who they're going to be, that's a rough road to go. So it's not a popular opinion necessarily, but my advice to anybody out there, if you're about to go to college and you got a girlfriend or boyfriend, and whether they're going to college or staying behind, I think the best thing is to break it off, because the distance is going to be an issue, and it gives you a chance to really explore who you are as a person, as an individual in those most formative years that are going to define the future for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you moved on from that relationship, were there things that you noticed changed in you as to what you were looking for? Or was it more just like, that was good, that's a building block, and now I'm going to add 2.0 on top of that with the next one? How did you approach that, and what's that look like for you?
I would say it was a building block. I'll say that every relationship I've had, whether it was good or bad, I've learned something from it and have made sure to take something from that and apply it to the next relationship, or take something that I didn't like from it and make sure that the next person didn't have that quality or whatever. So I used it as a building block. But once again, in college, I dated the same person for like 2 years, and I went for smart, funny, and athletic. Those were my 3 things. And check, check, check. What's hilarious, though, is that we got set up, and I was 100% not interested in this person at all. Like, just gave me bad vibes, which I should have, like, yellow, orange flag, should have kept that in the back of my head, but I didn't. And our first date was like to a movie or something. I think I was a sophomore in college. I didn't date my freshman year. And I was like, like I said, not interested in this guy. And I wore like my glasses, wore sweatpants, because I was like, I don't want to show any sign of being interested in this guy. But he was actually like very sweet. And we ended up obviously dating. But that yellow orange flag comes back to be a red flag when they cheat on you. So that was also a very formative experience in my second relationship.
Yeah, so that must have been a trigger, especially coming from a home and parents divorced when you were young, whether or not that was the cause for that. But I think that's something, especially now, there's so many, I see a lot of questions about friends with benefits, or I feel uncomfortable with my boyfriend or girlfriend, the way they look at someone else of the opposite sex, and how do I reconcile that? I think part of it is it's a natural instinct, especially at that age. Like, you see a hot guy or girl walking down the street, your eye's gonna go, and you got to be very careful about. There was one time, man, I swear to God, this is true, and I'll stick to this in my dying day. I was driving with my girlfriend, this is high school, and we pulled up to a stoplight, and there was this gorgeous blue Corvette. I mean, it had like the flecks of paint, like the sparkly paint, and it was just like glistening, newest, like that year's model. I'm staring at this car like crazy, and my girlfriend reached over and slapped me and got real angry. And that's only then did I realize that there was a smoking hot girl driving that car that I was staring at. But in that instance, it was like, I was usually very, very aware of where my eyes were going and making sure that she was not paying attention or otherwise occupied if I was going to take a glance. But in this case, she caught me, and it was honestly just looking at the car. And later I actually was kicking myself. I was like, I should have been looking at that girl, but I wasn't. I got punished for it either way. But it's stuff like that whether or not you consider that a red flag, or it's part of being who you are, it's really how you interact with the other person. Are you able to communicate that? Because of course I told her that. She didn't believe it. But, if you find yourself in a situation where someone is giving you those hints over and over again, like maybe once you can excuse it and it's like, all right, you get a pass on the first one. But as you start to see hints of whether it's infidelity or just something that really pushes you in the wrong direction, how would you advise someone to evaluate those red flags and really take stock of it? Because I think part of it is not wanting to feel like you failed at a relationship and taking that on you as this person is doing X, Y, or Z thing that I don't like. If I break up with them, that means I'm a failure in this relationship. Whether or not, whatever the cause is, there's some fear of that. How would you advise someone to navigate that?
Yeah, I would say it's always good to communicate how you feel. So one of the things that I do is, and to this day, and I've done this for a while, is if something's really, really bothering me, I give it 24 hours. And if I still feel that way in a day, then I'm having a conversation. I'm telling that person, hey, I know maybe you're not meaning to do this, but you're doing this and it's bothering me. It's triggering me. It's making me feel like this. Because if they don't know that it's bothering you, they're going to keep doing it. And they don't think that they're doing anything wrong. But if you can at least call out how whatever action or whatever they're saying makes you feel, I feel like that is only going to develop your relationship to be stronger.
Yeah, I like the way you phrase that, because I think where a lot of people go wrong is they say, you make me feel this. But no one can make you feel. You feel because of how you're responding to it. And when you say, you make me feel this, that person automatically goes defensive and you're not going to have a good conversation. So the way you framed it, I love that. It's when you do this or when this happens, I feel this way, or that action makes me feel this way. And it diffuses that situation of accusation. I think that's a great tip for anyone who's going to have a tough conversation. Think about the way you phrase what you're saying so that you're letting the person know that their action is affecting you, but it's not them doing it to you, because then you'll prevent that defensive reaction. You have a better opportunity to have a meaningful conversation.
Yeah. And I feel like some of the things that you get triggered by when you're younger, you grow out of, and you learn that your significant other isn't trying to offend you or betray you. Like for your example, if my significant other was looking at like some girl, I'd be like, let me see. Is she cute? I want to see. Like, now I'm interested and I want to see what she looks like. Right. So like you grow out of that things, because that's just, it's human nature. It's sometimes you do it without even thinking about it. And you can't get mad about that. So
yes, I agree with you there for sure. Like, Anna, for a long time, Ryan Reynolds was her guy. And we first met and I was like, brown hair, brown eyes, like kind of goofy looking. I don't get it. So it's like, at the same time, I'd look in the mirror and be like, well, what does she see in me? I'm not that guy. But yeah, I'm always interested to know, well, okay, you think that guy's good looking? Okay. It keeps it on a level playing field and everything's out in the open, right? Mm-hmm. As soon as you start to hide that, then there's suspicion. Because why would you hide that? It's human nature. So I think you're right. And part of it comes with maturing. So the same things we're saying, like I loved your tip about if you're angry about something or you're feeling a certain way, you give it 24 hours to marinate and see if it passes through your system. Because you've got to give yourself time to process what are you really feeling too. If you just constantly are reacting to that initial response, that's where a lot of bad blow-ups happen. But when you're young... Lesson
learned.
Yeah, right? We've both been there. Yeah. But in that younger state, especially in high school, early high school, even senior year, if your brain's not fully developed until you're 25 and you're graduating at maybe 18, if you're a late bloomer in terms of when you started school, you're still a ways away from that. And so having the cognitive ability to think, I need to hold on to this and not let it out is very hard to do. So I think for both guys and girls, if you're in one of those situations and you're feeling like, man, this is, and even if you do respond quickly, you do have the ability on the back end to think about, oh, was that too much? Was that too harsh? And don't be too proud to apologize. I think that's something that goes a long way and is really underutilized, especially sincere apologies. Like, I'm sure you've been apologized to, and it's almost like being gaslit, where it's like, oh, sorry, didn't mean to, or And the flippant way that it is said, it's just like, what the fuck just happened? Am I crazy? So if you're gonna apologize, be sincere. That's a bare minimum.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say though is that I feel like some people, when they have those emotions or they have that thing that's triggering them, they just hold on to it forever, and then it becomes a blow up. And so that's why I started, like I was at two ends of the spectrum with my emotions. And so that's why I started saying, okay, I'm going to give it 24 hours to process and to think through. And this isn't just for dating relationships. This is for friendships. This is for discussions with my parents. Like it's more than just work. Yeah, it's more than just someone that you're dating. Give it 24 hours because, I get immediately defensive, reactive. And if you want to talk about right now, it's not going to be great for either of us. 24 hours, I have time to put my thoughts in order and to really tell that person, hey, this is how it's making me feel. And you're a little bit more level-headed.
Absolutely. This is kind of off topic, but I'm curious to get your take on this. For a while, you got into weightlifting. We were teammates, and we were talking at the top about how we missed being able to lift heavy, and we took for granted what we had at the time. So I was competing up until a couple years ago, and ultimately, when I hung it up, it was because the last meet I went to, I just didn't have any passion. I didn't have any fire. And I realized that when we were competing, the things that I used to motivate me to pull on a big weight and challenge myself was anger and grudges that I held and all of this shit that I kept inside. And as I've grown up and matured and learned how to process those emotions and talk through problems, a lot of that's diffused. And I feel so much better and lighter generally just existing in the world, but I don't have anything to tap into to do something aggressive anymore, which, I mean, that's like shortcoming for a sport that I'm aging out of anyway. But I'm wondering if you find that has transpired day to day in your life, that you find yourself just more able to cope with challenges because of these tools that you've built in to process those emotions more healthfully.
Yeah. And I think it comes with growth though, because you start to have these conversations with people and show how you feel. And then you actually when you're in good relationships, you get that positive response. Hey, I had no idea that was making you feel like that. And so it makes you more comfortable bringing up these things that are bothering you with the people who you love or that you work with. So I think it comes with experience. And if you're being vulnerable and you're getting that vulnerability back, that grows with you.
I think that's something for younger viewers to hold on to, is just to understand that where you are right now is temporary. It's a phase and a season of life, but we were both hotheads when we were young. And I would love for you to tell some of the prom stories that you've got, because I think that's a good way to illustrate, we're talking about how calm and collected and what we've learned about how to deal with tough situations in relationships. But it's helpful to know that, we were both young and stupid and did some crazy stuff that we look back on like, wow, who was that person? And it helps paint the picture of, you can be this way now, but there is hope for you. And don't give up on who you are or who your partner is. You may not need to be with them, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be a complete shithead for the rest of their life either. And I think that's something to take away from this. So what have you got for me?
You want crazy stories from like my childhood?
No, I'll give you one. So it wasn't crazy, but it seems like now an absurd thing. And this is the same girl that had the car incident, right? So there's a little bit of jealousy generally underlying our relationship. But we went to prom and a song came on that was, do you remember high school? It's like our song. And that was a sacred thing. If it's your song, you're dancing with your girl. And it just so happened that I danced with an ex-girlfriend, and it happened to be to our song, me and my girlfriend's song, because she was in the bathroom at the time doing her hair, makeup, whatever. And this other girl was there and we were dancing. She came back and saw it. And that was like the rest of the night blew up and it was gone. It wasn't an intimate embrace or anything. It was just because we were still amicable. Like you were talking about, we were still friends. We were just having a conversation while we're slow dancing to the song. And it wound up spiraling the whole night out of control. And the rest of the thing just went to hell in a handbasket because we couldn't recover from that offense. Mm-hmm. And those are the types of things that's like, man, now we could probably put that behind us pretty quick. But at the time, it was like a world-ending event. Do you ever have anything like that?
I don't think I have anything like that. Well, so my senior prom, I went with my friends. Like we had a whole friend group. It wasn't like I was like dating anyone serious at that time. But I would say the craziest part of high school for me is that, well, I dated the guy for 2-ish years, and we ended up breaking up my senior year. And I don't know how your high school was, but in the Midwest, it's cliquey. It's really cliquey, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
My grade was insanely cliquey, but the grade below me was not at all. So I got along with a lot of people at the grade below me. But when I became single my senior year, I don't want to say I made it a point, but I seemed to have like started this trend of home wrecking, but not the whole
I love how that term gets thrown around like it's, yeah, you broke up a relationship,
well, let
you're
me
a home
explain.
wrecker. No, like I'm laughing because I remember the same terminology. It's just, yeah, sorry.
Girls who were kind of shitty to me, I was like, I'm going to see if I can date their boyfriend. And basically got to the point where they broke up with their girlfriend, and I'd be like, okay, bye. And like not date that guy, not do anything with that guy. Just see if I could get them to break up. I think I did that a couple of times, and then I was like, all right, I have to cool it.
Oh,
so
man.
I think that's probably my worst high school story.
Oh, I knew girls like you, and oh yeah,
It was
classic.
payback.
See, that's its own clique, though. Like not a clique, but like a subtype. When you think about Mean Girls and all the other high school movies that are out there that have these different stereotypes that are way overblown, but you can totally see where they truly exist, and that stereotype is 100% true. That same mentality, though, like it's the chip on the shoulder. It's like, yeah, I can do this. I'm badass. Like you've carried that through. It is through and through who you are.
But it was like a challenge. It was like more of a, I just want to see if I can do this. Like,
right, not the malicious side of it, but
Yeah.
that challenge and that the nature of in yourself to challenge yourself. The same way you do with weightlifting. It's like, I just want to see if I can.
Yeah.
There's nothing on the other side of it for me other than, a cheap medal if I win. But it's the challenge, the personal challenge. And I appreciate that. And I think you've carried that forward in not only what you're doing with Bella, but, your career path has been just leaps and bounds. You're constantly challenging yourself and taking on new stuff. It's inspiring to see. And I think you're just a great role model, not only for the young women that you're helping there, just showing people that it's possible. And that I think a lot of it just comes down to embracing who you are. And I think you've done a really good job of that. And that's kind of shown the same, what you did in high school, regardless of, the motive and whatever, but that desire for challenging yourself and to carry that forward, that's been a theme in your life to this day, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And not to derail and talk about work, but for the 15 years I've been in industry out of college, I have been in a male dominated industry where there are little to no females. And for you to stand out and succeed at what you do as a female in a male dominated industry, like it's so much more work than being a dude in a male dominated industry or being a female in a female friendly industry. So that's a challenge that I feel like I've done pretty good at succeeding. And I'm very proud of the things that I've done with my work, especially because I'm in health and safety. So I really like to help other people. But yeah, it takes a certain personality to be in the roles that I've been in over the past 15 years. That's
what's really impressed me, because I see the roles you're in, and it's like, it is roughnecks, it's oil and gas, it's energy industry. And I'm in a related field. And every time I go to a show, I'm amazed and kind of cringy about how few women are there. And then watching how they're treated by so many of the other guys there, it's just like, I feel bad and I feel guilty being just a part of that group. And so I'm always trying to be as encouraging and helpful as I can, if it's appropriate, of course. Have you had any mentors that have helped you on that path, or did you have to carve that on your own?
I feel like the women who have been in like the leadership portion of my career, I am learning from their mistakes more or less. Like stepping back, watching them, watching how they present and observing how the audience and taking those notes in and saying, okay, well, that's, I'm gonna, hey, that really worked. I'm gonna utilize that. Or, hey, that didn't work. That went over poorly. And I think this is why, and I'm gonna try and remember that. So I think it's learning from other people's mistakes, but I don't think I've ever had a female boss before in my entire career. It's always been males.
Man, two thoughts. Ironically, I've had almost exclusively female bosses. And so
Good.
it is good. And it's taught me a lot. You know, I totally respect a female authority figure, especially I still base every interaction with a boss I have on the quality of their leadership and their competency in the role. But their gender does not play into that for me anymore. And I think that's because I've had some excellent female bosses. I've also had some shitty ones. But if you slap a penis on that person and give them the exact same qualities, they're still a shitty boss. It doesn't change.
And they're probably
anything.
getting promoted.
Well, okay. Zing. Yes. Point.
No, but I will say that I feel like, not in this new role that I'm in, but in my previous roles where I was actually leading people, the females who I had on my team, I would make sure that I was providing them all of the resources so that they could be successful in this industry, because it's just not easy to be a female in a very, very blue collar, male dominated industry. So maybe I like favored them a little bit more, but it's because I was in their shoes and I know exactly what they're going through and the things that people are saying and how they are being judged. And if I can provide any of my feedback or thoughts on how they can improve or how they can survive, then I'm going to do that.
I respect that and I applaud that. And I hope that if there are other women out there who are in a role with an opportunity, and if there's men out there that are in a role and opportunity and you can be someone who leads the way for someone, please do that. Like, be a mentor, take that opportunity. I think our natural inclination to help people makes us more apt to do that. But hey, if there's somewhere that you see an opportunity, don't be afraid to take it. The other thing I wanted to note is when you're talking about learning from the women's mistakes that you're seeing, that fits right on top of the same way that you were looking at relationships, looking at what didn't work for your parents. And that's where you were saying, red flag, don't want that. That went over poorly. Oh, he did a good job there. Let me use that. So I think it's interesting that a lot of that still layers on, but it all goes back to that same root, and it's all relationship driven. Your relationship with your family, your relationship with boyfriends or girlfriends, your relationship with the people that you're communicating with professionally. It all really layers on the same way. So it's just changing which lens you want to look at it through. But it seems like a lot of those same tools apply. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. This feels like therapy, Tom.
Well, I'm no doctor, but I don't even play one on a podcast. I'm a goofball.
No, I would 100% agree. But it all goes back to taking the things that you have experienced in your life, learning from them and growing from them. And how you do that is learn from people's mistakes and make sure that you're not consistently, if you have a type that you're dating, you're doing something wrong, right? Like if you're constantly dating the same person, it's constantly failing. It's probably because they all have this one trait that isn't compatible with something that you want in a relationship. And so it's taking a step back and making sure that you're learning from each relationship that you have.
Yes, I agree. Pivoting a little bit, I also see a lot of questions from guys and girls that mostly young women that are actually voicing it. I know there are guys out there that are struggling with this, but the idea of all of my friends have a girlfriend or boyfriend, they're constantly talking about it. I've never had a girlfriend or boyfriend. I've never been in a relationship. It's all I can focus on. It's all I want. But I'm starting to feel like it's never going to happen for me. I'm going to be alone forever. That freak out panic of I'm 15 or 16, 17. I've never dated anybody. Does this mean I'm going to be celibate for my entire life and I'm never going to know what it means to have a relationship? How would you address that with someone who maybe spilled that to you in the fitting room at Bella Boutique?
Just wait till college.
All bets are off. Yeah, that's true.
Just wait till college. No, I would say with high school, you're so confined to the people who you go to high school with. unless you're playing travel sports or doing things where you're interacting with people who are not in your high school, you are basically confined to that group of people. And like, I went to a fairly small high school. Like, it wasn't like there was just thousands of kids. I think total was maybe like 500 kids, like not very many.
That's
so it's like
small,
a smaller high school. So I would advise, like, think about the things that you're passionate about, hobbies, sports, and get involved in things outside of high school where you're meeting people from other high schools around and working on something or doing something that you both enjoy, that is it's something that you're bonding over. And that's how you're making friends. You're meeting people who have the same interests as you and who are potentially people who you would want to date.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's, from the time that you're a kid, you're basically growing up in a bubble. And that bubble is limited to how far you're able to go from your house by yourself. Mm-hmm. And as you get to high school, that bubble gets a little bit wider. But it's as soon as you finish high school, whether you go to college or not, it's like you're shot out of a cannon and all of a sudden you can go in any direction you want. And the world is so much bigger. Like, I'm still overwhelmed a lot of the times by how big the world is and how deep you can go down rabbit holes in any topic, any type of thing you want to learn about. When you're so myopically caught up in high school, it's like, that is the world. Don't judge yourself, your accomplishments, what your future holds by what you're living right now, because it's going to blow your mind when, like you said, you go to college and you meet someone for the first time from either a culture or a race or a part of the world that you didn't even know was there if you didn't pay attention in geography class. Like, it's like, whoa, what is this? And it's so big. It's like saying, I'm going to go into Baskin Robbins and that's all the ice cream in the world. I'll try these 31 flavors. If I don't like any of them, what am I going to do? I guess I don't like ice cream. It's like, no, man, go find a boutique ice cream shop and try some of that green tea ice cream and all kinds of weird kind of flavors. It's like, man, just give yourself some time to find your footing outside of high school. So don't give up yet. I agree with you. And at the same time, it's like, if you haven't found someone that is compatible enough to warrant your attention, value yourself enough to be like, hey, I'm good. I don't need to, if I'm looking for a nice burger and I'm hungry and I want a nice gourmet burger and I pass a McDonald's, I'm not going to stop to eat that. McDonald's isn't a sponsor. So I'm not going to stop to eat McDonald's if I know that, hey, I might be hungry for a few more hours, but I'm going to find what I really want. So I think that's an opportunity for you to look at it that way too. Is like, hey, maybe no one's interested in me, but it doesn't say anything negative about me, because likely I'm not going to be interested once we get past that initial, I'm happy to be holding hands with someone. That relationship is going to be a dud anyway. And all you're really going to do is kind of blunt your expectations for the next one. So I think in most cases, if that's the case for you, you're better off until you get to that place where you can find something that you're also interested in.
And I think this is the same for not even ever having a significant other. This is the same for like as you were older. Like, I have gone gaps, years in between relationships because I'm working on myself. I'm developing myself. You're not going to be happy with someone if you're not happy with yourself. And so you're really taking the time to, at least in my past, I was like, okay, I got done with lifting. Now I'm interested in hiking. And I got a dog. And basically for a year, like every weekend I was in the mountains hiking because it's what I loved and it's what I was passionate about. And it was exercise. It was fulfilling all the things that made me happy. And I didn't need someone else to make me feel that way. And so I feel like the sooner that you are accepting of yourself and loving yourself and happy being alone without the significant other, it makes it so much more valuable when you find that person who you want to have in your life. And this actually reminds me of, we have a mutual friend who I went to their wedding, and I can't remember if you were there or not, but during his vows, he said to his now wife, and they are still together, he said, I don't need you in my life, but I want you in my life. And at first, everyone was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that during your vows. And now I'm like, that's amazing. That's exactly how I feel. Like, I don't need someone in my life, but I want them to be in my life. And I think that is spot on. And like I said, at first I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you just said that. But it's 100%. And obviously, like I said, they're still together. It's been, I don't know, a couple of years now. So that's what I think about a lot.
Dude, that's so funny that you bring that up, because I've said that to a handful of people. I tell that story. And I'm like, it blew my mind when they said that. And I think they're younger than me, for sure. I don't know how old you are. I think you're younger than me too. But I was just like, I can't believe you said that. And now I'm like, it's so wise. It is like a guru would say something like that. And it's one of those things that you're like, I asked what the meaning of life is, and you gave me this nonsense. And like 10 years later, I'm like, oh, I get it. I get
Spot
it.
on, 100%. Yes.
Yeah, man. Oh, yeah, that was powerful. And the other thing that you said that I really liked is, and this is regardless of whether you're in a relationship or not, you have to love yourself first. You have to know who you are enough and respect yourself enough and love yourself enough. Because if you can't love yourself, no one else is going to be able to fill that for you. And if you don't know what it means to love yourself, how are you going to truly love someone else? Maya Angelou said, I never trust someone who tells me they love me, but they don't love themselves effectively. And there's an African saying that says, never trust a naked person who offers you a shirt. It's hollow. It's not there. It's fake. And so if you can't love yourself and there's something about you that you find unlovable, you need to figure that out first and come to grips with that and start to love and accept yourself for who you are before you can truly find someone that's going to be a meaningful relationship. And I think that's what you're talking about with taking, long hiatuses from dating at all and just being with yourself and figuring yourself out. Would you say that's put you in the position that you needed to be in to find the guy that you are with now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Just finding things that I love, that I'm passionate about, and making sure that that person has all of the same loves and passions as I do. Because I never understood the opposites attract thing, because I've tried that and I don't think it worked out very well, obviously. But now I'm with someone who I'm like, everything that I love and that I'm passionate about, he is too. And so we get to enjoy these amazing things together. Not to say that everything that we love and do, we have to do. We can have other different things, but the things that I really, really, truly love to do, he does too. And I think that's why we are so compatible and why this relationship is so easy.
I think easy is an interesting phrase. And I do want to dig into this a little bit, because I think one of the things that I hear a lot is, and this is even from people who are on the fence about wanting to break up, but they're like, oh, but I love this person. We get along so well. Things are so easy, but I just don't feel like I want to be with him anymore. And how do I rectify that in my mind? Because those two ideas are divergent. And I think when we think about easy in terms of a relationship, even a good relationship, easy doesn't mean that it's not work. It just means that the work is not as hard, because you're able to work through things together because you're on the same page. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I'm not stressed out. I don't have anxiety. I don't have an internal block that's keeping me from voicing how I feel to this person. It's anytime I have an issue, a question, something that I want to talk about, I'm not embarrassed. It's just, hey, I want to have this conversation, or I want to ask this stupid question, and I'm not going to be judged. It's just easy.
And that's a combination of knowing yourself and loving yourself enough to know that you're worth it, and that if that person truly respects you and loves you, they're not going to find that. So I think that's where that self-confidence and that ease comes in, because you're not self-doubting, well, if I say this, what are they going to think of me? If I say this, are they going to break up with me? And then I lose all the leverage. Like, there's so many things that go into playing with that.
Yeah.
But for someone who is on the fence, and you might love this person dearly, you might be great and compatible as friends, but especially at a young age, man, if it's not fulfilling you, jump ship and try again. That's the beauty of being young, is that you have all these opportunities ahead of you, and you get to figure out what you like, what you don't like Katie's talking about, finding the things that light you up. All right, I'm going to look for that in the next one. The things that you don't, I want to make sure they don't have that. And as you start to hone that and narrow that in, that's how you're ultimately going to find someone that you're truly compatible with.
I have a funny story though about my first date questions. So, been in a lot of crappy relationships where you get to like a month or two and then you're like, what? Why? How did we not talk about this? I completely disagree with you. How are we in? This isn't going to work.
The core stuff of who you are.
Core things.
Yeah.
Yes, core things. So, in 2 relationships, I have learned a couple things. One is that I don't want kids. It's very well known. Since I've dated that person, they had a kid. She was fantastic. She was awesome. And when it was great, it was amazing. But when it was bad, it was fucking awful. And for me, this is very much me personally. I was like, nope, this relationship was meant for me to learn that I do not want kids. And that's okay. And so that's question number 1. Any first date that I'm on is, do you want kids? Because if it's a yes, it's not going to work. Why am I going to put more effort and time and money into a relationship that inevitably we're not on the same page on a core thing that you want or don't want in a relationship? Mm-hmm. The second one is probably a little bit controversial, but I ask it anyways. It's, what is your credit score? And I say that because I have also been in multiple relationships where dudes flinging money around, buying things, buying this and that. Come to find out, massive debt, can't afford things that they're purchasing. In one relationship, we lived together. I was paying monthly to help support like the mortgage, food, and everything. And homeboy came home one day with a Tesla. And I was like, where did you get this money from? And it was from me. And I'm like, well, so like, that's basically my car. And come to find out, like I said, massive debt, did not have financial in line, terrible credit score. So if you can prove to me that you have a great credit score, we'll go on another date. And nowadays with apps, you can just pull it up and be like, here's my credit score.
Yes.
So those are just my 2 questions, which I mean, I get a lot of shit when I tell people that, but it has saved, like I said, it has saved me time and effort and energy instead of finding out later on that that person is not someone who I want to be with. So
yeah, I think that's great advice for anyone out there listening, guys. Get those deal breakers on record early. That's going to save you a lot of time and hassle. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, when Anna, my wife, we met long distance. We dated long distance for 6 months, and then she drove out to Denver to live out in Denver, and we've been together ever since.
You guys meet in Vegas?
We met in Vegas, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So when she lived in Indianapolis. I went out to Indianapolis and drove back. And it was me and her dad that drove out with all her stuff. And before she found a place, she just put all of her stuff at the place where I was living with 4 other people. And her dad was putzing around my room one day while I was at work. And he found I had 5 books on bankruptcy in my room. And so he called her and was like, hey, get your shit. We're going home. You're not staying with this guy. And she called me in a panic. I was like, what's going on? My dad found these bankruptcy books in your room. And I still have them because my previous job, I was an editor for a nonprofit that worked with bankruptcy attorneys. And I put these books together and I just kept them as like a portfolio to show the work I've done. So I had 5 books on bankruptcy written by all these different lawyers. And I had to explain to them that, I'm good. Here's my credit score. But yeah, so I think there's definitely merit to that. And it takes a wise person one go round in that washing machine of debt to figure out that you don't want to be tied to something like that. The other side of that, guys, if you don't have your shit together, get it together before you try and find someone that you really want to be with. Because if they're smart, they're going to find that, and that'll pull the rug out from under you faster than you think.
Oh, yeah. Another side story, though, and this is not me, but one of my girlfriends was massively in debt, like would pull out credit cards left and right for stuff, never pay them off. Insane. And her husband never had a money conversation before they got married. And he found out real quick, like how bad that was. And not saying that they shouldn't have gotten married over that, but like once you get into that point where you're having serious conversations, where you're splitting rents, you're splitting utilities, you're having these shared finances, you have to have that honest conversation about money and understanding where people are with their financial situations, because otherwise it can be pretty poorly for one person or the other.
Yeah, and I think you don't have to be wealthy to have a good credit score. I think that's something that's a misconception as well.
Mm-hmm.
The deal with a good credit score is make sure that you are not overextending yourself. So if you don't make a lot of money, just don't spend a lot of money. Be smart with your money, invest where you need to. And as you grow and true story, when I first graduated and I moved down to Atlanta, and it was my first job out of college, I was living in an apartment for the first time on my own. And my buddies from college, they were a year behind me, came down to visit me 6 months later. I was still eating off of a cardboard box that I had moved down there with. I had one chair, and the 2 years I was there, I slept on an air mattress that I bought at Walmart that had a hand pump that I had to pump up every night because it also had a hole in it. And that's just how I lived. And it was because I was so concerned about going into debt, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to save as much as I could, that was something that I just tolerated for myself. But I've also never had a lot of debt as a result of the way that I thought about that. So
did you date anyone when you were sleeping on that air mattress?
I did. She never slept over though.
You're wondering?
Yeah. So yeah, there's detractions. And the point is, when those guys came down, they were like, all right, bro, this is sad. And we went to Goodwill and just got some furniture, just some basic furniture. I kept that stupid air mattress because I was too cheap to go any better on that. But at least there were seats in there for if I had people over. Just kept my bedroom door closed. But yeah, so you don't have to be wealthy to have a good credit score. It's just managing and understanding that what you're able to afford based on what you're bringing in. And in high school, that might not be very much, but it's a good time to start those practices so that when you are ready to find somebody and get serious, your shit's in order.
Understanding your finances, even with your first job in high school, is key. I wish I would have understood more about retirement savings and things like that when I was in high school and college, because I didn't even think twice about it. Honestly, probably until the last 5 to 10 years, I didn't really honestly truly dig into what the things that I should have been or could have been doing all of those years since I got into the workforce. So,
and all of those contribute to the health of your relationships on a deep, deep level. I think that pretty much that rounds it out for me. Like, I feel like this was a very interesting conversation for me. It's interesting to me that we had so many similar takeaways despite having different backgrounds, whether it was the household we grew up in, the ways that we dated. Obviously, I was a serial long-term dater as well, dating through high school, through college, same girl from junior year of high school through college. And then just the way that I evaluated relationships, it sounded like we did the same thing with like, oh, there's a flag. I'm going to put that in the back of my mind for later. And that's going to be a reason why I can say I'm leaving and feel good about myself. So it seems to me like there's some pretty common footing between us. And to me, it's a very small sample size, but hey, they're pretty basic things to think about as you're going through this relationship process. And hopefully there's something that stuck with you in this. Hopefully there's something that maybe Katie said or I said that forced you to think about things a little bit different and just change your perspective a little bit on what you're looking for in a relationship. And even if you want a relationship right now, as we're talking about going through your checklist of what are your deal breakers. For Katie, it's credit score, and what was the other one? Kids and credit. For you, obviously, in high school, and even if you're recently out of high school, those are not things that you're necessarily thinking about. But what are your deal breakers? What are things that you are willing to do in a relationship or not willing to do, whether it's sexually or just what you're into from a perspective of how your religion views certain things? Those things need to be out on the table early if you want to have a successful relationship. And if you have the ability to have a meaningful conversation with someone, don't be accusatory if you're asking questions or talking about your feelings. Express it as, this is how I feel about it, not this is what you're making me feel. Just other little things laced throughout this conversation that I think are so valuable, and that I wish I had had the perspective in high school to go through that and think about things in this way. So as we wrap this up, Katie, of course, I'll give you the last word. And I also want to ask the final question that I have for you is, if you did have an opportunity to go back and talk to yourself in high school, what piece of advice do you think is paramount that you would give yourself, whether it's relationship or otherwise?
It's not going to revolve around relationships, but it's going to revolve around developing that love for myself one of the things that I've really found later in life is that how much I love traveling. And I think if I was back in high school, I would really be looking into what options do I have outside of the United States. I went to college in the same town that I went to high school in. And it's because I didn't feel ready, but no one ever was there to push me to say, hey, like that's what you want to major in. You could go to Italy for 2 years and study that for half the price of college here and still get a fabulous degree, right? And so I would say to try and step out of my comfort zone of central Illinois and see what else is out there, because I think that would have been such a cool opportunity that I honestly didn't even know was available to me. So
yeah, it goes back to how wide that world opens up once you get out of high school, but you're really not thinking about it until then.
Yeah. And then to answer your other question, I would just say that the second that you're getting doubts or having second thoughts about your relationship is when you should really start to analyze if that's the person that you should be with. Because there has been, I would say almost every single one of my relationships that I have ended, by the time I actually ended it, I was already long gone, checked out. I was able to walk away from that relationship and not even look back. But it took me 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to get to that point where I could have had that entire time to start developing and migrating towards the new me of learning and taking those learnings from that relationship and seeing what else is out there and growing from that. And I feel like I wasted a lot of time. And I mean, no regrets. I don't really have any regrets, but that's something that I wish I would have taken the time to do in the past is if you know this is not the person for you, just get out, because you can continue on and grow and you're not holding that person back either.
Amen. At the end of the day, if it was meant to be, there's possibility of reunion. But
exactly.
If not, like, don't try and hold something together. A sinking ship's going to sink. I agree with you. I wish I had taken that advice as well. Well, Katie, it was so great to catch up with you. Thank you so much for your time. Again,
yeah, absolutely.
For anyone who's interested in learning more about Bella Boutique and the mission that Katie and her team are on, please check out the link in the notes below. And if you want to follow up with Katie, I think, can they reach you through the website?
Yeah, absolutely. I check all the emails, so I'm there.
There you go. So young ladies, young guys, if you have questions and you want to talk to a woman who's got a good head on her shoulders and will shoot you straight, no bullshit, reach out to Katie. Sure. And yeah, she'll set you straight. So thank you so much again, Katie. I really enjoyed it. And
yes. Tell Anna I said hi.
Stay in touch. I will.
Bye.